Hi, in this video, we're going to go over some programming concepts, and these concepts are the same in any language that you're working on or studying. And it's we're gonna learn to program by starting with a problem and then breaking that down. So we want to do a couple things here: is break the problem down into a few pieces, and then we're going to figure out how to do this in the language. And to me, the best way to learn how to program is to try to solve a problem. There are a lot of things out there on for loops and next statements and all this other stuff that you would use. But if you're really trying to solve a problem, that's when you learn how to program. So that's what we're going to do today. And I was helping my daughter with a science project, and what she needed to do was figure out pi. And so what that is if you draw a line from here to here in a circle, and you measured that, you could find out the circumference of the circle or how big the circle is, and you can do this. And everybody knows pi is 3.14, but it really goes on forever. And there are a lot of different formulas to do this, but what we needed to do was calculate that to a few digits, more than you can get in a calculator. So what we're going to start with is how do we solve this problem in PHP? And so let's start with our standard. We'll grab a button here. And we'll have the button start our calculation. And let's grab a label or two. Okay, so let's put these out there. Now, to calculate pi, the funny thing is it's actually a repeating formula. And so let me make a note here. So if we just put some text in here, everybody knows this is 314 something. But to actually calculate that, it's pi equals 4 times, and this is an older formula, but it's simple, so we're going to use it. 1 minus, and then it's 1/3 plus 1/5 minus 1/7. And this goes on and on and on forever. And so if we look for patterns here, which will help us in programming, what we're going to see would be a few things. One is the denominator here goes up by 2 every decimal place that we calculate pi to. So if we did it to 1 decimal place, we'd use 1/3. 2 decimal places, we would use, this part of the formula. 3, it goes on and on and on. But the denominator goes up by 2 every time. The second thing that we're going to note is that we start out with a minus for the first decimal place, and then a plus for the second, and then a minus, and this keeps looping. So if it's an odd number, we have to subtract it. If it's an even number, we have to add it. So let's go ahead and start building this out. We're going to start by building a few variables. So what we need first of all would be the number of decimal places that we want to calculate this to. Let's say we're going to do 1,000,000. That's 100,000, 10,000, 100,000, million. And then we need a variable for the denominator. And we covered variables in the last video. I can never spell. And we're going to start out with this being equal to 1. And then we need something to actually hold the pi calculation that we're doing. And we're going to start out with 1 here as well. So now what we need to do, since we have our formula down here, is we need to loop through this and actually start doing some of the math. And so we're going to loop through this 1,000,000 times because this is the number of decimals that we want to calculate to. So to do this looping, right, we're going to do 1 minus 1 divided by 3. Then we're going to do the 1/5, and this looping action is how we actually calculate this. So we're going to start out with a for loop. So for us to do something repetitively in computer terminology, this is called a for statement. And we're going to have a variable for this. Remember the $ for the variable within PHP. And we're going to start with 1. I'm going to call this I since we're iterating through here, and 1. And then what we're going to do is we're going to say if I can type here, is less than the decimal places. So we're going to keep doing this loop as long as this iteration here is less than our decimal places. Otherwise, if we don't put this section in here, then it would go on forever, and you're going to hear your fan and your computer heating up and going nuts. And then what we're going to do is if I is less than the number of decimal places, then we're going to add 1 to I for the next loop. Now, in our last video, we covered that you could do this I is equal to I plus 1, but there's a shorthand way to do that, and we're going to use that shorthand way here. So we're going to add this plus here. And what we've done is we've put this whole iteration here in parentheses. So we've said, all right, we have a variable that's equal to 1. As long as it is less than the decimal places, we're going to do something. And then after we've done something, go ahead and add 1 to I. And so this is the little syntax we use for that. Now what we want to do would be add some brackets. And these are your curly brackets on your keyboard, probably next to P. And in this case, let's just say that label 1, let's test this out. We don't do this a million times. Let's do it 10 times. So to test this for loop, let's say label 1. Oh, we have to start with this. We'll go into that later, why we do that. But for now, let's just do it. And we're going to say caption is equal to I. And we'll put the semicolon there. So if we run this, I'm probably going to have to save it. Yes, I do. So desktop, we're going to call this pi. And this is pi. Okay, so let's open up our web page here. Okay, so when we click on this, it says equal to I. And that's because we didn't put the dollar sign on there. Let's do this again. Okay, and so it went to 9. Now, why did it go to 9? So what happened here is it loops through this. It started with 1, and then the last time when it got to 9, it printed out our caption. After it printed out our caption, then it added 1, and we didn't have another print statement. So it's important to understand kind of what's going on in this looping, and when we add something to the variable, right? So if you're expecting 10, realize that that we only printed 9 there. So now what we need to do is, as we're looping through this, we're going to start to incorporate the formula. And the first thing that we need to do, again, we have this action down here, is we have 2 different things that we need to do. We need to add 2 to the denominator every time, and then we need to change up whether this is a negative or a plus. And so what we're going to do is check to see if we're at an even number, we add a plus, and if we're at a negative number, we're going to add a minus. So the first concept here is this for loop. The next concept is if. And this is important. We use it every day. If you do this, then this will happen. And that's what we're telling the computer. So let's go ahead and comment this out. So what we're going to say is that if, and we're going to use our iterator. Our iterator is counting for us. And if our iterator, and we've never used this before, but if we said divided by 2 is equal to 0, then, and we're going to put more of these curly brackets. So we always use curly brackets to tell our code, you know, if this happens, execute this code between these curly braces. And that's what we're doing here. And that's what we did in the for loop. Now, if we said that if I is divided by 2 is equal to 0, you know, we may be okay here. But the thing is, we have an even and an odd. And so where this is where you actually do the math to divide by something, what we want is the remainder. Because if I is not 999,000 divided by 2, you know, that really doesn't tell us anything. So we need to know if there's a remainder or not. And so to do that in PHP, we use the percent sign. And so now what we're saying is give me the remainder of this number divided by 2. And if it's 0, that means that this is a even number. And if it's not, then it's an odd number. So what I'm going to do is write in code just what we're saying. If it's even, do this. If it's not even, then do this. And we can say that if it's not even, then we know it's odd. So we can call that else. We could put another if statement in there if we wanted to, and you can have a loop of if statements. But and you can have, you know, hundreds of loops in there. The distinction is if we put another loop statement in there, we're doing another calculation. If we put an else statement in there, then we don't have to do the calculation, and we're only just saving CPU cycles. So we're making it so that the computer didn't have to do anything else. So if we wanted to write this out, we could say divided by 2, and you could say if it's not equal to 0, right, then do something. So we could put this in our other code, but again, I'm trying to just be a little bit more efficient here. So now we have a for loop, and we have an if loop, and we also have an else statement, not an else statement, but an else statement. So what we're going to do is the first part of this problem that we're talking about is increasing the denominator by 2 with each iteration. So let's do that. So let's go ahead and create another line here, and we're going to say denominator is equal to the denominator plus 2. And you remember we've done this before. That says add 1. So we could put a couple of those statements in there, but we're just going to do it this way. And so we need to do the same thing down here, right? So regardless of whether there's a remainder or not, whether it's even or odd, doesn't matter for this part of the problem. So we're going to go ahead and add in 2 to the denominator every time, right? Let's go down to our comment. So every time we have to add 2. The even or odd part comes in deciding whether we need to subtract something or add something. So let's go ahead and add this in. Now in this part, what we're saying is that this is even. And you always want to comment your code so that when you forget, you can come back, or if somebody else sees it, they can see what you're thinking there. So we're going to add the pi calculation. And we're going to take the old pi calculation with 1 digit less than this, and we're going to add it, and we're going to update it with our other denominator here. And if we look, this part right here, let me go ahead and just add this. Let me copy and paste real quick. So this is the first key part to our formula. There are actually 2 sections here. If it's an even number, this right here, 1 divided by the denominator, right? That is the same as this right here. And the plus is if it's even, right? And so our next statement is going to be the same thing down here. Let's do this. But the difference is we need to subtract it. And so we're adding 2 to the denominator every time. If it's an even digit, we're going to add this calculation. If it's an odd digit, we're going to subtract it. And the main thing here isn't the denominator and all this other stuff. The main thing is that we're doing a loop 10 times for now. We're going to increase that to 1,000,000 or so. And we're learning the if statement. So if this is true, or if this is false. These are the key things that we want to learn, and the else statement right here. So now that we have our calculation, what we need to do is do this piece right here. So we need to add this other little section. Again, the math here isn't important, more so than the logic. And I think this is going to go right in here. Let's clean this up. Okay, so let's add in our next stuff. So let's say pi and it's 4 times the pi calculation, which is all the denominator stuff that we've been adding. Okay, and now that we have this, let's see, I've got a mistake here, pi underscore calc. I may have taken this out of put it in the wrong spot. Let's put it right in here. There we go. What happened was I took it out of the function, so it wouldn't work if we were pressing the button. And you got to be careful of these brackets here. But now what we want it to do is we want the caption to show our calculation. And so we just want to put PyCalc. Okay, let's take the comments out here. And let's see where we are. Now it's 3.04, not 3.14. So when we go back here, right now we're doing this, we're not doing enough of the calculation to get accurate. So let's say we add in a couple zeros. 3.14. So that's made the difference there, is that you have to calculate it to enough decimal places. So if this is 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, million, let's go ahead and run this to million decimal places. Boy, this little thing comes up all the time. There we go. Now we're getting some digits. So again, what we've done, we've created three variables. We created a for loop that loops to however many number decimal places we have. We created that variable. We told it as long as it's less than, so that we don't have an infinite loop. We increment our variable. All this is important, otherwise you get an infinite loop and your computer just keeps going. And then we've added if statements. So if we divide this number by 2 and there's no remainder, it's even. If it's not even, we know it's odd. So we just use an else statement. And when you're doing these if else, if it's true, it's going to execute this code between these two brackets. And with our else statement, if it's not true, it's false. And so it's going to execute this code. We updated the calculation, and then we updated our label. So I wanted to give you another way to view programming on why you need these loops, why you need if statements, and how you can solve a larger problem. So take care, and we'll see you in the next video.